Doing?
I'm doing good. Happy
Happy
Friday.
Friday. Yeah, we were both out last week. I had to take a trip to Florida to visit mom. I,
Yeah.
I went to Siesta Key, pretty awesome beach.
My vacation was going back east.
Yeah, you went to the
So
beach too, though.
I did for like just 2 days.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah,
Actually, I had really good weather. It was like close to 80s.
it's getting pretty
So
nice out here. I'm glad I'm not
yeah.
in California.
It was 80 yesterday. So
No,
it
just
was
kidding.
pretty darn good.
It's always perfect there,
Yeah.
except for the rain. Um,
Except for the rain. We need it though, but
so today we want to talk a little bit about PDUs and what does a PDU stand for?
power distribution unit.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I had some customers asking about PDUs just this week.
Yeah,
Um,
which
so
is
it,
interesting because if you're active in the Ingenious Cloud, you'll see references to PDUs
right, yeah,
in
I
the
noticed
cloud
that
interface.
yesterday. It just popped up. I had to do a refresh, but then the PDUs started popping up.
Uh, yeah, so we will be launching cloud PDUs. So that's a really interesting that really that I mean that fulfills the line even more, right? So now we
Completes
have
it. Yeah.
SD-WAN gateways, we have switches, and we have access points. We'll have PDUs. So yeah, that's another huge benefit to anybody trying to remote troubleshoot, right? Or and just have visibility into like into a network.
So it's basically like a rack mountable power strip. We've been saying power strip a lot lately. It's like a rack mountable power unit, right? That has how many plugs? One's gonna have 14 or six
Yeah,
plugs.
there's two variations, a 1U and a 2U.
Ah,
A 1U is 6 outlets. A 2U is 12 outlets. I said 14, but I think it's 12.
okay,
Um, so yeah, 1U and a 2U,
gotcha.
that you'll have
Six.
control over it within the cloud. So you'll be able to control the ability to power cycle like a switch, for example, or like the gateway. So you're taking away power from the outlet and then adding the power back to reboot those devices. So right now we can reboot ports and restart switches like a soft restart. This would be like a hard reboot where you're powering the device down. So it
Yep.
just gives you more control in that regard, but it also allows you to kind of like measure how much power usage you're using, right? So
Yeah.
that's another piece of it too. There's a lot of things involved in it. So there are two main things that
So,
it'll offer.
so so basically, let's say you have a cable modem plugged into outlet one on the switch, and the internet goes down on your site. You'd have to have some other way to get in there, like a backup or something, right? But if you, as long as you still have internet access, and let's say the gateway goes down or you can't contact the gateway, you could say, okay, cycle power on port one.
Yeah, yep.
So some of these things, it would just cycle the entire thing, right, and shut everything down. But with this, you'll be able to individually cycle outlets,
Yes, that's right. Yep.
and you'll be able to see individually how much power everything's drawing individually to maybe make some changes to try to
Yep.
get your site cost down.
Yeah, maybe you are using like the 1U 6 outlet and you need a second one, or
Yeah,
you can make a call basically with that information of like, okay, I don't have enough PDUs. I need another PDU.
right.
Um,
And
yeah.
the power consumption thing is getting more and more important because power costs are going way up.
Yeah. Yep.
So I mean, even
And you
in the
have some
data
examples
center,
of that, right?
yeah, I mean, even in the data centers, I mean, it's going to start making more and more sense to start monitoring, how much power you're using. Um, and I'm doing that at home. I'm using like Home Assistant, which I have like basically plugins for all my appliances, and I'm using like smart plugs to measure how much each computer or outlet's using, right? So I have it all rolled up in this one system, which will be like the Ingenious Cloud. You'll be able to see all these PDUs from that one screen. Um, but it's getting even more important. Like I'm going to add some power devices that will measure like my water heater or my air conditioning compressor, to see exactly what's using the most power. So maybe you want to decide to upgrade something, right? Like if,
Right.
in the data center, if like a server is using way too much power, that PDU is going to tell you. Maybe you're like, oh, we just got to upgrade this thing because it's like costing more than it's worth every month, or maybe use AWS or something because having this thing on site is just like costing too much money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
um,
I mean that kind of goes down. I don't know. I just thought about this when you said that. Like, so we already measure on all of our hardware. We already measure the memory usage and
yeah,
the CPU usage. And so if you're seeing like high memory usage, high CPU usage, and you also look at the PDU and you see that it's using a lot of power, then maybe you can start to troubleshoot the hardware at that level, right?
yeah, exactly. So all right, so that's pretty cool. I think a lot of people will be interested in that. And any idea when?
Like Q3,
Q3. So we gotta
like
wait a while, but
August time frame.
okay.
We're
So yeah,
hoping
we'll
so.
we'll talk more about those when they're available. And yeah, I want to talk a little bit about PoE switches too, because it seems like we're selling more and more PoE switches now.
Yeah,
And in the beginning, I remember I was hardly selling any PoE switches. People were buying individual injectors.
yeah,
They were like, oh, buying six APs, I'll buy six injectors, or they're using the power supply that came with the APs, which none really come with them anymore.
yeah, yeah. I think I had to convince you of selling switches. So
Yeah, for sure you did, but it seems like it's picking up even more, like because I think these PoE switches, like people are using them like power strips. I'm gonna say it. I know you don't like that, but I heard this term coined. But they're kind of using them like power strips because they're powering phones, lights,
everything, yeah, pretty much
everything now,
everything.
right? And the Wi-Fi engineers, they basically just want to plug into something, right? They want something that's going to give them power and data,
Yeah,
and they kind of overlook the switches. But now we have to kind of make sure that you're getting the right switch, for your network, right? That's
yeah.
going to be able to handle the APs and whatever else you might want to plug into it. PoE cameras, lights.
Especially like on bigger networks, you have to make sure you have enough memory. If you're buying like like enough processing power and enough memory to do like on bigger networks, you got to make
Right.
sure that you have the right switch. You can't just buy any off the shelf switch to be implemented into like a large network. So,
Yeah. And then, I mean,
um,
there's even more and more devices getting pushed to the edge, connecting on the Wi Fi. So those edge switches have to handle, those big cam tables, all the MAC addresses. So they have to have enough memory to be able to do that, right? Whereas
yep, exactly.
before,
Yeah.
before you just had maybe, a computer and a phone plugged into the switch, two devices, two MAC addresses. Now you may have hundreds on one switch.
Yeah, and another thing that we didn't plan on talking about
Yeah.
is the importance of going to multi-gig and 10 gigabit, right?
Yeah,
Switches.
for sure, for sure. Because that switch is it's a long term investment. And like today, 1 gig is pretty much fine
Yeah.
because we're just seeing like 1 gig, 2 gig internet connections, symmetrical maybe something like that, right? Just coming available. But like if you're gonna keep that switch for 7 years, you may want to think of using multi gig now
Yeah.
because we know that connection is gonna get faster.
Yeah. Yeah, refresh on access points is what, probably 4 years, 5 years, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I
Maybe
mean,
even less.
3 to 5
3 years?
years on APs, I would say.
5 years?
3 to 5 years. I'd like them
Five.
to replace every 3 years, but people probably do it about five
Every
years.
year there should be a
Every
AP.
year. No, but yeah, I say 3 to 5 on APs and maybe 7 to 10 on switches, something like that. Like
Yeah.
once that switch
Yeah.
is in there, unless there's a reason to upgrade, they're not gonna. And I mean, when you're talking about a site that's sharing a 1 gig connection, yeah, that's not really that important, right? But if you're starting to get fiber coming in with like 10 gigs, then you definitely would want the multi gig to go to your
Yeah.
access points, right?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about that, I would, 5 to 7 years, I would already consider multi-gig, 10 gig.
Right.
So, especially with, our Wi-Fi 6E, and now we're moving into Wi-Fi 7
Wi-Fi
here very
7, yeah.
shortly. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about gigabit Wi-Fi, right?
Yeah. And I mean, those multi gig switches also have POH, right? They have 90 watts, some of them.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, ours in particular is up to 60
up
watts.
to 60. So you
Yeah.
may need that much power for Wi-Fi 7, or if you have, I know some of these, they have like some smart displays that you can power from PoH, or
They're typically around 90
there was
watts.
around 90 watts. Those things
And
are big,
lighting
right?
too. Lighting is high too.
Yeah.
Lighting's up to 90 watts as well.
Yeah, so just plan for those things. But I kind of know what people are looking at when they're buying it. They're like, "This is all I need for today," and I'm
Yeah.
gonna put it in. But if you have a high performance network, um, with demanding users, I would definitely look at multi gig, even if you don't think you're gonna need it right now, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. For sure.
we have an 8 port and a 24 port available, and a 48.
Yep, 8, 24, 48.
All right, so last thing I want to hit a little bit like on the importance of being able to troubleshoot with the equipment, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
so when someone calls in, asks us a question, like we actually have this equipment in our home labs, right?
Yep.
So if someone has a question, I can look at it. Oh, look at the configuration, change it, test it to see what they're seeing, right? That's pretty important. Especially with where the way everything is remote now and the way the cloud's remote. I mean, if you have the hardware here, you can see what's going on, and then remotely implement that for your customer, right?
Yeah, I mean, we do this all the time. I
Yeah,
mean, we do this internally in our office, but I also have it at home as well, like you were saying. And if somebody was saying, I can't authenticate Google All with an iPhone, for example,
yeah,
I can easily implement that and turn it on and test it if I want to.
right,
Or
right,
like, we were doing like site-to-site VPNs. We were testing that as
yeah.
well, right? So, there's all these things that you can do. But yeah, having a home lab, I think is critical.
Yeah, and you don't need much. I mean, I would just say the gateway, maybe one AP and a switch at minimum, right? And then you can
Yeah.
basically do everything and see
Yep.
what's going on. So yeah, I mean, for a lot of these system integrators, I know they just buy the equipment to
Just to sell, right?
just to sell to
To
use. They're going to
install.
use it immediately on the customer site, and that's okay because we're here. We can answer questions if they have it, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's a huge advantage if they have even a small setup at home. They can test this out before they go out to the site.
The other really important thing that we didn't plan on talking about either, sorry, but when you get your hands on the hardware
Yeah,
and you have a lab, you start to learn the very little you start to understand,
intricacies.
like, okay, this is the best formula for this installation,
Yeah,
right? Like, this is my configuration, this is the way I want to set it up, and you can replicate that in like your customer site, right? So like if you have a really good understanding of the product and how it works, and like all the configurations and things like that's another huge benefit, right?
yeah,
You can troubleshoot, but it's a really great training, for training, right? So
yeah. And I mean, we know like the range on these access points, in a real world environment, like
yeah,
what you're going to see, what kind of speed you should be seeing, and all this, right? So, if they're having something different go on, then we can usually look at it really quick and make the changes needed, right?
yeah, you can make a fast judgment call based off your own experiences within your environment. Like,
Yeah,
either if I'm in my office or I'm at home and somebody says, I'm not getting the speed that I thought I was going to get, and I can ask, like, okay, what's your client device? What access point are you using? And understand really quickly like how it works in my home versus my office and all the other experiences I've had, and
yeah,
say, yeah, there's something wrong. You have something
right,
set up wrong,
right,
right?
for sure, for sure. All right. Well, I think that's it. Anything else this week?
Nope, I think that's it.
All right. Remember, like and subscribe. We'll be back next week and talk about some more Wi-Fi